the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas Podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, Volquest's own Austin Price. Austin, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chase. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I don't know if are you a Curb Your Enthusiasm guy? I just did the Larry David. Pretty good. But you probably don't get that reference.
I'm not. But hey, I get it's popular.
It is popular. I mean, you're a Seinfeld guy, right?
A little bit. I couldn't recite episodes. I was never big into Friends or Seinfeld, but I mean, yeah. I would watch it if it's on. Mm-hmm. It's funny. But I was never big on the must-see TV. Outside of Wings, I was a big Wings guy back in the 90s. Big Wings guy.
My parents are big Wings guys, or guys and gals, I guess I should say. Like that was on around. I don't know if they're still on, but it's always a good. Like there's a certain amount of shows where if I pop in, go back home, and I just walk in the living room, like Everybody Loves Raymond, Wings, Cheers, certain shows that are very much on the table to be on the television at any given moment.
Nantucket, baby.
There you go. I mean, I got Matlock behind me.
Lowell, Antonio, Helen, Faye.
Goodness gracious. There you go. Well, Austin, we've got a lot of Tennessee recruiting stuff that I wanted to run by. No percentages today, Austin Price. We're still months out on the percentage game in terms of Tennessee recruiting, but I am curious. Some things just kind of broad strokes, some kind of getting into the weeds here a little bit. But my first question to you, because we haven't talked in a while, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and you being the expert on this has me really curious. And now that we have 4 years going on 5 of recruiting boards for Tennessee since Josh Heupel arrived, in what ways has Tennessee's recruiting board changed in the 2026 cycle from previous years that you've seen?
I don't think they're recruiting the state of Texas or the state of Florida nearly as hard as they were back when Heupel first got here. Not to say they don't recruit them. I still think they're dabble in Texas. I don't see them play in Florida a whole lot at all.
Yeah.
Compared to when he first got here. I think he just thought, well, I'm coming from Central Florida, we'll use what we got, da-da-da-da-da. Then I think he realized, it's going to be harder to pull kids from that state. So why waste a ton of resources? So they'll dabble in those states, but you see them heavily in Virginia, heavily in North Carolina, obviously Georgia, Mississippi, they're trying to be a big player for TK, the Keys kid, and Tristan Keys is right up there, as the top priority for uncommitted players at the wide receiver position. And, I think they're trying to stay more regional and then dabble nationally. If they find a guy in Arizona, if they find a guy in Nevada, California, they're certainly going to recruit them. But it's not where they're trying to plant the flag, so to speak.
Yeah, the Florida thing, it's funny. It's like, I feel like Heupel should have just asked you and Brent about that one of like, hey, Florida kids just like, it's not a good track record there. You might be from UCF and all that, but Florida kids and Tennessee recruits just never really works.
Well, there was people in the building that have been around that, that did say that to begin with. And I'm not sure it resonated at first, but I think after a year or so, it resonated pretty well. And, that's why I think you've seen them really up the ante in North Carolina.
Yeah.
They tried to be a player in South Carolina some. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously they've had success in the state of North Carolina the last several years.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's always going to be there, right? Like the Georgia battle. I mean, it doesn't help that
everybody recruits that state.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's just such a melting pot. There's so many kids and so many, you got Auburn, Alabama, Clemson, South Carolina, Tennessee, that are all, Florida State that loves to recruit South Georgia. All those schools are right there near the border of Georgia in some form or fashion. So they're always going to be diving into the Peach State. And Georgia, because of their success, they've recruited nationally more. So they don't get every top player in the state of Georgia. So there's some gettable guys in the Peach State.
I mean, Tennessee's gotten the number one receiver in the state of Georgia in back-to-back years now with Smith and Mike Matthews. So, I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, they won big battles. Christian Gass obviously won. They fought to the end with Georgia. So Tennessee wins their fair. Like you always say, you got to get your fair share in the state of Georgia with just it being a border state, regardless of how difficult it is to go up against Kirby and the Dogs right now. I mean, the thing, and this is kind of like a big picture recruiting just blueprint question I have for you, Austin, is that like part of the reason that Georgia and like Atlanta just growing the way it is. I mean, 7A football in the state of Georgia is different than a lot of just about anywhere else in the country outside of Texas. And it's a bunch of metropolitan area schools. I mean, it includes the biggest county I grew up in, Gwinnett County, but it also has the powerhouses in South Georgia, the Lowndes of the world that have just like these crazy facilities, kind of like those Texas facilities, all grouped together. And my question, like when I think about Tennessee's ability to stack top 5 classes in the future, if that ever becomes a possibility, it's like I think they need Nashville to continue to get bigger and better in terms of just more and more talent, with Nashville just growing at the rate that it is. Do you agree that Tennessee kind of needs Nashville to continue to grow and become more of a melting pot at the high school ranks, or is there a different kind of path to Tennessee having the kind of high school blue chip talent that Georgia has?
I don't think it'll ever get to where Georgia's got it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think the population for the state equates the same.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it can continue to get better. It's gotten infinitely better the last 15 years. And so, I think the more that you see Nashville grow, the more, businesses that roll in there that bring, families from other states. Kids may not grow up in this state, for 18 years before picking Tennessee, but if you can get them in here for a handful of years,
Mm-hmm.
you certainly can, show them what the power of the state is. And then all of a sudden, they kind of become pseudo Tennesseans in a lot of ways. So, again, it's about getting the players, that fit you. It's about getting the players that you want, not the players with the best rankings, because rankings are flawed. The rankings are skewed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with them. I didn't agree with them when we were rivals. I don't agree with them when we were on 3. Some of them I agree with 100% on. Some of them I shake my head at and go, what are you saying? But I'll also be the first to tell you, I'm not a great evaluator of talent. I can sit there and watch a kid live and go, yeah, that kid can go. That kid's that kid can move. He's shifty. He's fast. But watching film, I am not good at that. That's a gift that I do not have. But like once I see them in person, I do feel like I can determine pretty quickly whether a kid, can play at this level or not. But watching film, 2 totally different things. So, for Tennessee, it's about watching film. It's about being able to see them live. It's about getting more and more players in this state and growing and becoming, a deeper state, and then getting the players you truly want. You're going to offer a handful. You're going to offer a handful of those kids that you offer that, you're not going to end up wanting. You just offered to kind of get in the game, and then you decided you don't want them. It's about getting the players you truly want. What's your percentage of guys that you truly want? Since Josh Heupel's been here, after the 22 class, where basically they went over because of the sanctions and stuff from the previous regime, they've hit, I would say, at least 80% of the guys they want. Like, they've missed very few. They've missed a few, but it's been very few. And so they've done a nice job of keeping the best players that they truly want in the state.
And also retention, right? Like that's been the other thing is like not only have they got them, they especially this past cycle did a really good job of retaining the guys they want and showed that their retention strategy has been wise, especially on like with what you saw in the secondary last year, with just the big exodus of guys where we kind of raised an eyebrow, and they were just fine and they were right to bet on their just kind of their evaluations and who they brought in-house and being able to replicate or even build off what those guys did previously. Is there a Boo Carter in the 26 class for you? And what I mean by that is Boo was your lone true freshman starter last year on Tennessee's CFP team. This year, it just feels obvious that David Sanders kind of fits that bill. A Boo of like, if you had to look at one true freshman to make a Boo kind of impact, it's just makes the most sense for it to be David Sanders at right tackle. Is there anyone on your radar who fits that bill the best of like, if you had to look in your crystal ball here, Austin is most likely to be a true freshman starter in 26 for Tennessee?
Man, that's a good question. Depending on how the quarterback battle shakes out, you might say Faizon, but I think that's going to be such a hotly contested thing. Who knows how many twists and turns that thing's got in it once, you get to next spring and then next fall camp. I don't know. That's a great question, Chase. You look at a guy like Tristan Keys, can he be that guy? But here's the deal. If Mike Matthews has a really good year, He's going to be set up. Where's Travis Smith at in year 2? And then Braylon Staley. And so, I don't know. That's a really good question. And again, that's way down in the weeds as far as trying to prognosticate that. When you first started asking me that, when I think of Boo Carter, I think of Tennessee, maybe, they weren't sure on the size. Then they watched him play, and it was no question that they were all in on Boo Carter. I think the same thing with Craig Tutt. I think Craig Tutt's got some it to him at Oakland. Again, I'm not calling him to be a starter in 26, but I think he's one that, Tennessee needs to try to get that one done, not let it drag out. It's not that they're slow playing, because I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I just don't think Tennessee's like super pushed hard either, right? I don't think they've just tried to say, all right, let's get in this thing. Let's get in let's end this thing, not get in this thing. They're in it, have been, but let's end this thing. And, I think if they do that, I think they'll be really, really happy that, that they don't let it become like the Daune Morris did a year ago, where you kind of recruited him, you kind of did, and you were wanting a bigger back, then you decided to go all in on Daune Morris, and yet, you're able to overcome it because he was committed to Southern Cal. And the kid didn't really want to go to LA. Let's face it, he didn't want to go to LA. There's no guaranteeing that Craig Tutt doesn't commit somewhere more regionally, and it's a little harder to flip one like that. So get that one done early this year. That's where I'm at with it. But again, that's my opinion.
Both Oakland kids too, right? Like, isn't Craig Tutt an Oakland kid too?
That's correct.
Yeah, you don't want to start that with one of the powerhouses in the state of Tennessee is slow playing one of the powerhouses.
I don't think they're slow playing, and they're recruiting him fairly hard. I just think that it's not been where they've just said, hey man, we want you to get in the boat right now. We want to get this thing over with. We need you to be part of the CAT class early. I don't think those conversations have happened. I'd like to see them happen, but again, my decision.
You're in on Craig Tutt. I wonder too how much of it is like safety is so weird because they end up flipping Timothy Merritt late, and Timothy Merritt was just he looks like he could be a big guy. Clearly, it seems like Tim Banks is in on Timothy Merritt, and we'll see at safety where things are with guys like Aegis Farouk, who might be positioned to have a big year. And we've seen a lot of transfers, like you saw Will Brooks as a walk-on. We've seen a lot of different guys in that safety room, but they haven't brought in a blue chipper yet. Like, no one's been a quote-unquote 4-star, and Shady Hayward just hurt. Like, that was a punch to the stomach for a lot of Vol fans.
It was a punch to the stomach for the staff. I mean, that's one that they did a really nice job on, but I mean, he had people around him that, that wanted to go to Florida for a little bit more money. And, I'm not sure that kid had a lot of say in it. Now, he would probably tell you differently because it's easy to say that, but in the moment, I think that, outside influences pushed him to Gainesville. And I mean, hey, that's part of the game. There have been times where outside influences have pushed kids to Knoxville. So that's part of the game and part of the things you have to battle in recruiting. That was before NIL, and it'll continue with NIL as all that stuff shakes out.
Yeah, I think safety is the only spot where they haven't added a 4-star kid in the Heupel era. I think it's the only one they haven't had one. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some kids that are going to play in safety that were 4 stars.
That's true.
That so that's kind of how I look at it, right? I mean, like what you are, what somebody sees you as, as a recruiting analyst, and what you play in college, 2 different things. So what are you, star wise? At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if 3, 4, 5. I mean, how many guys are running around the NFL that were no stars? That just developed,
Where do you think the Vols have to target the most due to the position room numbers going into next year in this 26th class? What positions do they have to hit the hardest?
I mean, I think you got to continue to interior defensive line. I think secondary is important. I think wide receiver is important. Obviously, they've already got 2, committed, with Evans and King. You like where you're at with the tight end spot. You love Carson Sneed. You already have your quarterback. Running back is important. I think Tennessee would love to hit Savion Hiter. That's the one that, like, to me, that's the white whale out there is Savion Hiter. I mean, Tennessee can try to be a player for Latimer. I think they're in it for the Walton kid pretty deep. Latimer just feels like he's headed to the Big Ten. But Savion Hiter is the one that I think, Darrell Sims, if you tied him down and said, which one do you really want? You have to tell me. I think he would say Savion Hiter is my guy.
The Hiter thing is interesting to me, Austin. I wonder if it's the same to you, where I think we haven't seen Tennessee invest at running back in a way that I would assume, have to invest in Hiter. And that's just such with how they operate in terms. Last year, it just felt like an anomaly with Dylan Sampson having to be the bell cow back, because we haven't seen that in the previous 3 years. And it feels like the rotation is more of what Tennessee would like to do.
Yep.
Like, does it make sense to go all in on like a Savion Hiter back? And it kind of like, when you think about just not salary cap, but just roster allocation, like it is kind of, that one has just raised an eyebrow for me, where I am kind of surprised, because Tennessee has just done so well at rotating so many guys there. That do you go big on Hiter, and does that make the most amount of sense?
Well, I think they certainly are going to go big.
Yeah.
And if they miss there, then they'll pivot and go in another direction. But I think they're certainly going to go there. Listen, I think you evaluate each class different. You evaluate each kid different. If you feel like this is a true game changer at tailback, and it's hard to think, it's not like Dylan Sampson came in with all this star power behind him. He just was a really good football player, and he broke records that were 100-year-old records. So that's why I never get super caught up in like the whole rankings thing. Don't get me wrong, you need good players. You can't just roll with a bunch of 3 stars and everything's gonna be okay. Like that's not real either. But I don't judge every kid that's a 3-star going, he's a 3-star. But I think every kid's built different. And look at James Pierce was a 3-star until he wasn't, and then he ended up as a 5, by on 3. So and if he gets drafted in the first round this year, then that 5th star was warranted by Charles Power. So we'll kind of see where it goes. But I think with Savion, man, if you like him that much, you go after him.
I've been curious. You mentioned the North Carolina thing, Austin, and what I've been, I guess, from there's still a lot of time here before we really see what ramifications, I guess, there are, if any. But from what you've gathered on the trail here, Austin, has Bill Belichick's arrival at UNC made any difference thus far to the inroads that Tennessee's made in the state of Tennessee? Because, they're just going and getting the number 1 player year over year, David Hobbs, Faizon Brandon. Do you see an interruption there a little bit, or no?
To this point, I'm not seeing any interruption. I think it's going to be a flashy object for in the short term, and we'll see if Bill Belichick can win, and we'll see how long he sticks around. He says that the whole Don Shula record's not that important to him. I think it is. It would be to me. Heck, if I was 20-something wins away, you're 3 years from becoming the all-time wins leader in the NFL. I would want that. Just because I would want to walk out of that thing with the most Super Bowl wins and the most wins period. And it's not, getting that record doesn't change, his status or anything like that. But once you've coached that long, why not try to go after it? So how long does he stick around, and then how quick can he have success? If he has quick success, and in this era, you can flip it a little easier because you're able to go out and go to the portal and add players and see what happens. But and the ACC, let's face it, is fairly weak. So, it's ripe for the picking if you're Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Next up here, Austin. This is something I didn't think we would ever see again, but it seems like it's a distinct possibility. I want to get it from your perspective. When we looked at Georgia's quarterback room, when they had Brock Vandagriff, Gunnar Stockton, and Carson Beck waiting behind Stetson, we all kind of looked at that and go, that's kind of an anomaly. Like Gunnar, grew up a Georgia fan.
It was dumb, and it proved to be dumb. It proved to be dumb for it's proved to be really dumb for Vandagriff, who's now retired out of football. It proved to be dumb, in a lot of ways for Stockton to this point. Now, again, if Stockton is the guy, if he wins the job, he'll have to compete against the Puglisi kid, or however you say his last name.
Yeah.
If he's the guy, then obviously it was worth the wait. But that loading the room is just you're just not going to stick around that long. And I think where you're going is how does Tennessee go with a loaded room?
Yeah.
After this year, let's say Nico's done at the end of the year, which everybody expects him to be. and off to the NFL, then you go into next year with a 3-man race for the job.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is where does Jake Merklinger think he's at? Does he think he's got a real shot to win the job? Does he like his chances? How does he perform this fall when given an opportunity? Taven Jackson never gave himself that shot. He played the fraction of a game, and then, saw Nico throw it and knew Nico was coming in with the big NIL deal and said, I'm headed to Indiana. Like where's Merklinger at when he watches George for the next 9 months, when he sees, Faizon come in here and throw it, at bowl practice and then head into spring. Where is he at? Does he feel like, he's got a real shot? If he does, then you're looking at a 3-man race going to spring. Well, as I said on the board when they were talking about David Sanders versus Larry Johnson, like they're going to keep the older guy engaged and ahead of the younger guys through spring. They don't want anybody knee-jerking and leaving. Like that's just how that works across all positions and all sports. That's not a football thing. That's every sport thing.
Yeah.
And so, but guess what? Players, they're in those meeting rooms. They're in those practice sessions. They see the talent of others. And so, does he feel like he's got a real shot? If he does, then you're looking at a 3-man race going through spring all the way into fall camp. And it'll be the first time we've had a real quarterback competition around here in a while.
And we haven't seen anything like that in a long time. Like 3 legitimate blue chip options at Tennessee. And I mean, that's if they don't even take a transfer. And that, I mean, it's way too early to forecast, but I mean, true freshman, that's a lot to put on Faizon, especially depending on how this year goes. If you're back-to-back CFP teams and then to just put that on a true freshman, regardless of how high you are on him, that's interesting. I mean, if like, it's just the dominoes are so potential, right? Because are so interesting because if certain guys win the job, that drastically changes things in so many different ways.
Well, it does. If Faizon wins it, then George and Merklinger are both going to be out.
They're both gone.
You're left with a true freshman and then one. I mean, there is a pecking order here. I mean, and then if George wins it, Merklinger's gone. Faizon, is he sticking around? Does he think he's getting past George in time? Where's he at mentally? I mean, like quarterbacks are a weird, tricky domino, and how you handle them can really determine where the program goes, good or
bad. Final one here for you, Austin. Outside of Sanders, who do you think, looking into the future, Vol fans will come to find winning this particular battle in 2025 was a big deal for Tennessee? Daune Morris.
Yeah, I'm going to be bullish on him. I just think he's got some it to him. I love his personality. I think he's going to be a good one. And, maybe it's not this fall because they've got a decent room there, but I think he's going to be bullish to try to get on the field. I think Tennessee's going to be happy they won the battle for Travis Smith. I think Tennessee's going to be happy they won the battle for Isaiah Campbell and Ethan Utley. And, and then I think they're going to be really happy they won the battle for Daune Morris. I like this class a lot.
Do you think it's the most talented thus far as a whole?
I do. I think most talented overall. I will tell you another sneaky good one, and he's my under the radar. He's not going to play this year, in my opinion, just because they're loaded on the guard. I really am bullish on Anthony Ogamoro. I think he's going to be like this under the radar sleeper kid that when you look up in 3 years, you're going to go, man, I'm glad Tennessee saw that kid for what he is, because I think he's a really good player.
Is he a guard or a center?
Could play either one. I think he's a guard, though. Okay.
And he has some time to develop. I mean, you have the 2 transfers in Wendell Moy and Sam Pendleton who have a couple of years. And
it's hard, though, man. These kids don't want to develop. They want to play right away. I mean,
But even in the offensive line, I feel like that's the one where you have to know.
It's a developmental position, but kids are finicky, man. Like they just – they struggle with it. And now that you add money into the mix and transfer portal and people behind the scenes are like, man, you can play here, you can play there. Let's go. Come on, let's get out of here. Like it takes a disciplined kid to kind of weed out all the noise.
Well, it's kind of like what you said. Like quarterback, you don't really have time to waste. It's kind of like you really got to get that right quickly. But you just need one good year of tape as an offensive tackle or a guard at Tennessee, and you could be an NFL draft guy. Like you can wait on your body to develop and just only have a great year of tape on a good team, and then you're off to the pros. Like it just, you don't need years of coverage. Like, I just feel like it's just a little bit different. And defensive line, you're rotating all the time. Garner's done a great job there, so they get to play early. Linebacker, they've rotated well. I just think offensive line, I don't know. I wonder how when they just recruit these kids, like, hey, look, like you're in the SEC. The body type is not the same. Like, it's gonna take some time to get this down, but if you wait it out, like, all you need is a year. Like, you just need a year of good tape and you can go off the NFL.
Well, maybe they'll bring you over and let them talk to the kids.
Oh, let me. Like, I have just Austin Price. Like, just let me in there. I can solve Tennessee recruiting, playing time stuff. I can organize it for everybody involved.
No doubt about it.
Austin Price, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Volquest.com this week?
Well, got continued football coverage. The Vols are off on spring break. The kids are all out at the beach and doing their thing this week. They'll be back on the practice field next Tuesday. Then we'll have a lot of basketball coverage. Tennessee will be up in Lexington for the NCAA tournament. Robin Grant will have you covered. Eric Kane will be down in Tuscaloosa for the Vols and Tide. That's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series, all of which you can catch at Volquest.com.
Austin Price, thank you so much for making the time. I greatly appreciate it. Go subscribe, Volquest.com, if you have not already today, and we'll have to check back in again soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jake.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.